Tonight, the King 5 investigators reveal the Renton Police Department has reopened a 3-year-old criminal case into allegations of sexual abuse by a former pastor at one of the biggest churches in South King County.
Alleged victims hope this means someone will finally be held accountable after a trail of suffering that was left behind at that church.
As Kristen Goodwillie reports tonight, Renton detectives began looking at the case after King 5 started asking questions.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Highlands Online.
What he did was terrible, and he should be held accountable.
We recognize right now many of you are carrying heavy burdens.
This is the former Highlands Community Church youth pastor at the center of the investigation. His face is blurred because he hasn't been charged with a crime. He denies engaging in any illegal activity. But the King 5 investigators have found that last year, 37 people told church investigators they either experienced or witnessed the pastor grooming, manipulating, or sexually abusing boys and young men for 2 decades. Records show the pastor has been fired, but after more than 36 people came forward, to date, no one's been held criminally accountable. Not the pastor who allegedly abused his power or church leaders who members say should have put a stop to it.
It was just normalized because it was talked about. Like, it wasn't this is all going on in the dark and nobody, but it was like hiding in plain sight.
Former Highlands Church pastor Alex Johnson was one of the first on record to demand accountability. 4 years ago, he sent this scathing letter to church leaders saying this was a crisis, that the youth pastor was a skilled manipulator and allowed to operate unimpeded for 25 years. Instead of taking action, Johnson says the church turned on him and forced him out.
Practically a cease and desist letter from our executive pastor over HR, just telling me that just needed to shut up. Like, the church was handling it. I just said, I can't do this anymore. And so turned in my resignation.
2 months later, the church finally took action, and emails show they hired outside investigators to look into the alleged abuse. The final report, released in 2023, found decades of alleged harm done to children and young adults at the hands of the youth pastor, and that the church knew or should have known about it. The detailed report says the youth pastor hosted hot tub parties for teens who at times were naked. The pastor denies that ever happened. Investigators also found he slept in the same bed with boys, which goes against church policy, and that he would grab, touch, or smack boys' private areas while playing games. By phone, the youth pastor told King 5 the investigation was flawed and conducted by a biased organization, that the allegations sound horrible, but he did not engage in grooming behavior.
We would get access to different hot tub parties or get Airbnbs when other students were left at camp.
James Miller attended Highlands Church summer camps as a teenager. He says he wasn't a victim, but the youth pastor did give him and other campers special treatment.
It's hard because when you're so young, you just don't process things like that. And, I've known him for such a long time, but there definitely was, oversteps of boundaries.
The worst of the allegations go beyond crossing boundaries. 2 young men say the youth pastor sexually abused them. In police and court records and the church's own report, both men say he began grooming them as teenagers, and as they became young adults, the youth pastor offered them premarital counseling sessions. They say the pastor insisted he prepared them for their upcoming sex lives. They say he ended up practicing sex acts with them. According to court and police records, both say it was not consensual. Neither of the alleged victims wanted to talk on camera, but both say they're still suffering.
Yeah, I do believe him.
James Miller was friends with both men.
My heart breaks for, the victims and the people that he did hurt and affect that way.
When we talked to the pastor on the phone, he admitted to King 5 that while inappropriate, these were consensual relationships, that he's not a predator, and he's taken responsibility and apologized for abusing his leadership position. So why haven't the police done anything, especially given this detailed 67-page report by the church's own investigators? Renton PD tells me the church never handed it over, but they should have. 2 days after calling Renton PD, they reopened the case. Detectives say the report is concerning. In a statement, Highlands told King 5 it made the report widely available, but did not think to send it to Renton PD since they had previously closed the case, and that they are cooperating with law enforcement. Last year, the church made an explosive announcement. They sent a letter to their entire congregation admitting they failed to keep their youngest parishioners safe. They wrote, "The spiritual and sexual abuse is horrific," and they lament this took place under their leadership.
Well, is that it's easy looking back now and going, I now know like I was doing the right thing.
Pastor Alex Johnson, who first tried to get the church to do something, is now dedicating his life to make sure this doesn't happen again.
Alexander Edward Johnson.
In June, Johnson got a doctorate in psychology from Seattle Pacific. He's starting his own company to help churches hire the right kind of leaders.
Something different needs to happen. Their care was not prioritized. The organization protected itself over the people.
So what about the youth pastor? Well, since the church fired him, our understanding is he does not work in ministry. The Renton Police Department says they are still investigating, and we have no idea if there will ever be an arrest or charges. What we do know is detectives are in the process of interviewing alleged victims and witnesses.
So what about the church? Were they required to bring this information that they had to police?
Well, Joyce, Washington is actually just one of 5 in the country states that do not require members of clergy to be mandatory reporters. And so in the last couple of years, there have been bills introduced in the legislature, but none of them have passed.
Certainly something that needs to be followed up on, for sure. All right, Kristen, thank you. King 5 investigators are dedicated to serving the public interest through watchdog journalism. If you would like to submit a tip to our team, just email investigators@king5.com.